And all of you, especially in our remote locations. That's pretty cool. Hey, I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored to start this whole thing off, and I appreciate what Tripp had to say. And it really is an amazing thought when we think about over 100,000 people leading in all kinds of different capacities, the for-profit, non-profit, marketing, entrepreneurs, people who work for entrepreneurs, people who want to be entrepreneurs, 20-something-year-olds that have no responsibility but have a lot of ideas, and they're sure their ideas are a lot better than those of us who are older's ideas. And we all come together around the subject and the topic of leadership, and all of us are leading in some capacity. So what I thought we would do is to make sure that we're all on the same page. I want us to do some leadership confessions together. There's an old Scottish proverb that says open leadership is good for the soul. You've probably heard it, confession is good for the soul. So I thought we would just start off today by making some confessions together. So you guys ready? So you repeat after me, which means I say it first and you say it later. You don't ever have to tell teenagers that. You just have to tell adults that. Here we go. I may be in charge, but I don't know what to do. I may be in charge, but I don't have all the answers. And here's our final one. I'm not the smartest person around here. I'm just the leader. I just want to let our audio people know that I don't have a preview monitor. That's right. So this is the deal. You're not where you are because of how smart you are. The reason you're where you are in terms of leadership, there's several reasons. Some of you just happen to be related to the right person, right? I don't, any current context not in mind. Some of you, you are where you are purely by a hiring accident, right? They got the resumes out of order. Your file was confused, and suddenly you got the job. And you know you're a bit of a pretender. You're not the smartest person. You're not the best leader. Some of you are where you are because you just got there first, right? Some of you are where you are because the company was small and now the company's large, but you just got there before the rest of the people, and the momentum of the company pushed you up into ranks of leadership. And you look around at the 20-something-year-old and 30-something-year-olds around you, and you're thinking, they are way smarter than me. They are way more intuitive than me. I hope no one discovers that somewhere along the way, right? In my world, I'm the leader because I had the idea first. And some of you, that's why you're the leader. You're entrepreneurial. You own a company. You did something for a while, got an idea, chased that dream. That dream's starting to come true. And the reason you're in charge is because you had the idea first. But you're not the smartest person in your organization. You're not even the best leader in your organization. But by providence, God's grace, however you see all that, there you are in a position of leadership as a manager over a department, over a division, over a branch, over a business, over a group of businesses, or perhaps your own business. And the fact is, we know we never have all the information we need. We know there are people who could probably make better decisions than we make. But at some point in your world, and some point in your leadership, there's a group around you, the discussion's been had, all the information's on the table, everybody's looked through the Excel spreadsheets 1,000 times, and they turn to you, and you have to make the decision. And in that moment, you are confronted with the most important leadership reality, and that's simply this. Leaders are important, and leadership is important because of the thing we hate the most, which is uncertainty. Uncertainty is why you're a leader. Uncertainty, to some extent, is why you were hired. Uncertainty is sort of like this. Uncertainty is not an indication of poor leadership. And sometimes we think that's the case, that if I were a better leader, I would know what to do. If I were a better leader, there would be less uncertainty. If I were a better leader, I would, sound a more precise signal, be able to give more precise instructions. But the truth is, uncertainty underscores the need for leadership. As long as there's uncertainty, we need you. As long as there's uncertainty, your corporation, your company, they need you. It's uncertainty that makes leaders leaders. It's uncertainty that drives us crazy. It's uncertainty that makes us feel like pretenders. It's uncertainty that makes us look around the room. Maybe this is a confession. I look around the room for the adults. It's like, where are the adults? Because remember when you were in your 20s, there were always those older people, and if there was a real crisis, you knew who to call. And in your 30s, there were generally some people you knew who to call. And then at some point, you look around and you're the adult in the room. And you've got to make the decision. And you'll never have all the information you need. And the bigger your organization, the bigger your division, the more money, the more sales, suddenly there's more at stake. There are people's lives at stake. There are jobs at stake. The future's at stake. And you got to make the decision. You have to make choices. And the fact that you're in leadership means you know something about this. And the fact that you're in leadership means you are not intimidated by the uncertainty of the culture in which you live. So today we're talking about choices. That's our theme. And to get us started and to get our head in the game, I want to give you 3 questions that I'd love for you to begin asking. All of you could step up on this stage and you could give us the process that you work through in making a big decision. Every leader settles into a rhythm of decision making. I'm not pretending to try to change the rhythm of your decision making. What I'd like to do is add 3 questions to the arsenal of questions that you already ask when you think about what's the decision that I need to make. So here we go. Question number 1. What would my replacement do? Question number 1. What would my replacement do? Now, here's what this question does. This question brings objectivity to the decision-making environment. All of us fall in love with the way that we lead. All of us fall in love with our products. All of us fall in love with the way our organization goes. And the longer you are in an organization, a division, a department, whatever it might be, the longer you're there, the more comfortable you become with what you're doing. And every once in a while, in the midst of a decision, we need to back way up, embrace the objectivity that comes with this question. What would my replacement do? Now, some of you could relate to it this way. Do you remember as a kid, and this was my experience, some of you will remember this, as a kid, your parents got a new house, and they had a living room, and they needed a couch. So they went to the department store, and they bought a couch, and the couch was perfectly chosen for that particular wall, and that particular room, and that particular house. Everybody loved the couch. And the couch was chosen because your family needed a place to sit, and it was chosen specifically for that environment. And then years went by, and your family moved, and they took that couch. And they moved into a bigger, nicer home. And they took that couch that was designed and chosen for a smaller home in a different era, and they put it in that brand new living room. And suddenly it was ugly. And nobody in your family knew it. You don't know this, but every time neighbors came over to see your family's house, they looked at that couch and thought, wonder why that's there. But nobody in your family saw it. And then they moved again, and they picked up that ugly old couch, and they moved it, and by this time, they'd fallen in love with the couch. And what began as a place to sit has now become a mascot. And every time they'd move, they would think about getting rid of that old couch, but now this couch has memories. This is a couch that's full of emotion. You know, we nursed our children on that couch. We perhaps conceived our children on that couch. I don't know. There's just so much memories around this couch. We can't get rid of this couch, but it's an ugly old couch, and everybody outside the family knows what it is because now you've lost objectivity. Now, the point is, in family, you can move that couch all day and keep it forever until you put it out on the street. No harm done. But in business, in the marketplace, you carry around ugly old couches too long. You lose objectivity around what you're doing. And it can sink you. I actually adapted this question from a quote from Andy Grove in his book, Only the Paranoid Survive. I'm sure some of you have read this book. It's been out for a long, long time. In this book, Andy Grove tells the story about in the early 80s, they were a chip manufacturer. They made memories. It was all about those Intel chips. And the Japanese got into the business, and the Japanese were making them cheaper. So Andy Grove and his team decided we're going to make ours faster. And the Japanese made theirs faster. And then Andy Grove decided we're going to manufacture more. And then the Japanese out-manufactured them. And suddenly this brilliant guy with this incredible team with an amazing product found themselves in an unsustainable business model. And they didn't know what to do. And he admits in his book, he had fallen in love with chips. He had fallen in love with the memory manufacturing business. This was who he was. It was what he was known for. It was what Intel was known for. In his book, he tells this story, and I love this. He says, I looked out the window of the Ferris wheel of the Great American Amusement Park revolving in the distance, and I turned to Gordon. Gordon Moore was the CEO of Intel at the time. He said, I turned to Gordon and I asked, and here's the question. If we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he would do? I got to tell you, this question sits on my desk in my office. I look at it every single day. And in light of what I do as a profession, that may seem a little unsettling to some of you. I don't have a scripture verse on my desk. I have this question. If the board kicked us out and they brought in a new group, what would the new group do? You know how powerful this question is? This question brings immediate objectivity to the decision-making process, to the choosing process. Here's what Gordon Moore said. Gordon answered without hesitation. Suddenly, this is how powerful this question is. Suddenly, there's clarity. He answered without hesitation. He, the new person, would get us out of memories. I stared at him numb. And then I said, why shouldn't you and I walk out the door, come back, and do it ourselves? Why don't we walk out the door, come back in as if we are the new CEO, we're the new chairman? Why don't we walk out, come back in? Why don't we do what we know the next guy would do, because the next guy would walk in with such clarity? The next group isn't going to walk in love with memories. The next group is going to walk in love with intel. The next group's going to walk in love with the mission and the vision of this organization. We're so emotionally wrapped up in what we've been doing. We will never create a sustainable business model until we are able to differentiate ourselves from our approach to business to get back into business. And so that's exactly what they did. And in his book, he goes on to explain that was the defining moment for him. So here's the question for you. In the midst of all those difficult emotional choices, what would the next person do? What would the next person do? What would the next person do? And I got to warn you. In fact, some of you, for the rest of the day, you're not going to get past this question. This question brings such extraordinary objectivity to the decision-making process that can actually make you fearful. But it might be the defining moment. Next time everybody at the table turns to look at you and you're the most influential person in the room. Second question is this. What would a great leader do? What would a great leader do? I got this from my good friend and mentor, Bill Hybels. I was sitting with Bill. He was eating sushi, and I was watching him eat sushi going, how do people eat that? You know, I don't get that. But anyway, we're in Chicago, and Bill leads a fabulous, fabulous network of organizations that's international. I said, Bill, when you're making decisions, what goes through your mind? And right out of his mouth, he says, I ask myself the question, what would a great leader do? Now, let me talk about this question. This is so powerful. This question takes you out of the smallness of your personality. This question takes you out of your immediate environment. This question brings greatness to your soul as you imagine, if I were a Jack Welch, if I were a Sam Walton, if I were a Frank Blake, if I were a Winston Churchill, if I were just fill in the blank with whoever you think the great leaders are, if I were that man or that woman in this situation with this decision to make, what would a great leader do? What would a leader that is purely driven by the mission and vision of this organization do? What would a leader do who's not concerned about bonus, who's not concerned about personal reputation, who's not concerned about what everybody else is going to think, and who wouldn't be concerned about facing down a board if they knew they were making the right decision? What would a great leader do? Great example of this comes from Chick-fil-A. This is probably my favorite Chick-fil-A story. Back in the early 90s, Chick-fil-A faced a brand new type of competition in the food business. Up until that point, it was KFC, it was fast food, and of course Chick-fil-A, in our family, we don't consider Chick-fil-A fast food. We just consider it really good food that you get fast, okay? That's what we told our children. We brainwashed them. Anyway, in the early 90s, up in the Northeast, there was a startup company, some of you may remember, called Boston Chicken, that eventually became Boston Market. They had 13 locations. They're moving south. Then they had 30 locations. They went and did an IPO. Their stock came out at like $20-something. By the end of the day or the first week, it was at almost $50. Within a very short amount of time, they'd raised over $50 million, and they were moving in on territory and on a market and on a space that Chick-fil-A had pretty much owned, especially in the Southeast. And this sent a ripple of, almost panic through the executives at Chick-fil-A. So they began thinking, they began talking, here comes a new competition. And so they began asking this question, how do we outgrow Boston Market? How do we get bigger, and how do we get bigger faster? How do we consolidate our control and our influence in these markets so that they're going to have a difficult time moving into the Southeast specifically as we continue to try to move into the Northeast where they've got a foothold? How do we get bigger, and how do we get bigger faster? They had a growth plan. They had a growth track, Chick-fil-A did. Steady plotting, the principle of the tortoise. that all of a sudden there was a little bit of panic. So as Truett Cathy, he explains this book that tells the story in Wealth, Is It Worth It? He tells the story that he sent Dan, his son, up north to talk to some New York bankers to see how much money they could get quick. They even considered an IPO. And all of a sudden, and this whole story culminates in a boardroom discussion one afternoon where all the people who are going to make the decision are sitting at a table talking about the competition, talking about what they can do, these new opportunities, how much money can we get, how can we get bigger, faster. And my good friend Dave Salyers was in that meeting. He said, suddenly, out of the blue, Truett Cathy, in an uncharacteristic expression of emotion, begins pounding that mahogany table. And everybody stopped and looked his way, and he said this. He said, I'm sick and tired of all this discussion about bigger. What we need to do is make it better. And here's the quote from the book. If we get better, customers will demand we get bigger. See, that's great thinking. That's how great leaders think. So in the year 2000, when Boston Market had intended to do $1 billion in sales, in the year 2000, Boston Market was actually in bankruptcy. And that was the year that Chick-fil-A, for the first time, hit $1 billion in business. By staying true to the mission, the vision, the strategy that they adopted a long, long time ago, and they asked the better question, not how do we make it bigger, how do we make it better? Now let me talk about this question in one more way. Listen to this. The question, what would a great leader do, is a threatening question. And I want to give you permission to create some margin in your thinking, and here's what I mean by that. As you make even the minor decisions in your business or your industry, as you make even the minor decisions in your department or division, I want you to give yourself permission to pause. Maybe get up out of the room and walk around. Maybe go sit in your office and ask this question. Not that I'm committing to this. Not that I'm a level 5 leader. Not that I'm, Winston Churchill. Not that I'm even that selfless. Not that I'm even that committed to the company. But if I were, what would a great leader who is me in my position with my influence and my resources and my assets, what would somebody who is me in my position do if they were truly a selfless, level 5, what's in it for everybody else, I'm not concerned about my reputation, what would a great leader do? And here's what will happen. If you will give yourself permission to ask the question before you make a commitment to do anything with the answer, if you will give yourself permission, the margin to ask the question without making a commitment to follow through on the answer, you will discover something profound about yourself. You will discover something significant about the way that you lead. And you will discover opportunities that have not been there before because you were constantly dealing out of your own insecurity, dealing out of your own experience, dealing out of what's expected of you, dealing out of what's expected of you at home. And suddenly you will step into a new arena of thinking as a leader. And you may never follow through, and you may never do what a great leader would do. But now you know. Now you know. And here's what some of you are going to do. You're going to become great leaders. Because once it dawns on you, there's another path. Once it dawns on you, there's a better question. Once it dawns on you that you have the capacity to make a decision that is unlike any decision that's maybe ever been made in your company, ever been made in your industry, and certainly a decision that goes way beyond anything you would have ever personally considered. You may discover the great leader in you, but you'll never discover it until you first stop and give yourself permission to ask the question. What would a truly great, level 5, selfless, not in it for me, what's best for the company and the people in this company, what would a great leader do? And there will be tension in that question. And there will be extraordinary opportunity in that question. What would a great leader do? Third question. What story do I want to tell? What story do I want to tell? Now, this is so important. Every decision you ever make, business, personal, family, health, every decision you make in your life is at some point going to be nothing more than a story that you tell. That's it. Every decision you make, I don't care how large, how small, within a week, within a month, within a year, within 5 years, it is nothing more than the story and part of the story that you tell. Every time you make a decision, especially large decisions that impact other people, you need to stop and ask this question. When this is simply a story I tell, when this is sitting around the coffee shop talking about old times, when I've left this company and I'm sitting around talking about my career, when I'm looking at my teenage son or my teenage daughter in the eye talking about business, what story do you want to tell? This is the legacy question. And let me give you some advice. Don't ever, ever, ever choose anything that will make you a liar for life. Don't ever make a choice that will make you a liar for life. Here's what I mean by that. Some of you already have these black holes in your past. You can't tell your whole story. You have to skip over parts. You have to exaggerate parts. There are questions you hope people never ask you about your business practices. There are questions you hope your children and your grandchildren never ask you because you'll have to lie rather than tell them the truth. Never make a choice in the moment that makes you a liar for life. Make decisions that create a story that you are proud to tell. What story do you want to tell? Because no matter how big the decision, no matter how much money is involved, at some point in your life, it's nothing more than a story. Listen, money comes, money goes. Your story is with you forever. I learned this from a mentor. I was in my 20s, and there was a business guy in our city. I knew his kids, and that's how I met Charlie. Charlie Renfro was a mentor for many, many years. He was in the outdoor business, built a huge business in the outdoor business, and record storage business. Made millions and millions of dollars. But he used to meet with me every Tuesday morning over at a restaurant across from Piedmont Hospital in the city of Atlanta. And Charlie would walk in he was just decked out. Charlie was one of the first people I knew other than preachers that wore cufflinks. Okay, I'd just never seen a business guy in cufflinks. And he'd walk into this restaurant where we would meet, and I'd be sitting there, tired, and I wasn't married yet, and I just had this kind of job that was just so small, I wasn't making a difference. And Charlie would walk in, in his suit and his cufflinks, and he would sit down, and he would slap the table every single Tuesday morning. He'd say, "Andy, what you working on big? What you working on big? What you working on big?" I would think, nothing. I ain't got nothing big. I'm not working on anything. Stop asking me that question. Because, he's going to New York, and he's dealing with this and that, and he's buying a company, sold a company. He's just got all these stories. "Andy, what you working on big?" I'm like, "Nothing. I have nothing big." Okay? But that was Charlie. He told me a story during one of our meetings when he talked about getting his career started. He said he lived in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And there was a group of people. There's a guy that started a company, an outdoor company, billboard company. And it was going well. And he hired Charlie as a salesperson. And he got all these late 20-year-old guys together, and he said, "Here's the deal. We're going to build this company. We're going to build it fast. We're going to build it big. Then I'm going to sell it, and all of you are going to get a big check. Are you in?" Of course, yeah, we're in. He said, "Now, there's a couple of stipulations, and one of them is this. This is a 6-day-a-week job. This is a 6-day-a-week job. You work Monday through Saturday. Sunday, do anything you want. This is a 6-day-a-week job." And all these young, eager guys are like, "Yeah, well, Charlie was married, had 2 little kids, some more on the way." A few weeks into this, he realized, I don't think this is the story I want to tell. I don't think this is the story that's going to lead to a place that I like where it ends. So he went in to see his boss. He told me this story. I was in my late 20s. It was such a defining moment for me. He went in to see his boss. And he said, "Look, let me try 5 days a week. I can do this job." No, this is a 6-day-a-week job. Everybody's here on Saturday. So he went back to his wife, and they discussed it. And then he came in, and he said, "Look, I can't do it. You write the script for my exit, but I can't work 6 days a week in the outdoor business." Interesting conversation. Didn't go well. Charlie went home, loaded up his family, sold everything they could, left town, left the state, eventually ended up in Atlanta, Georgia, where he began his own outdoor business that he built into a very, very successful multi-company enterprise. And eventually he sold his enterprise and made lots and lots of money. And the man that originally hired him did the very same thing. He built his enterprise just as he promised he would into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and he eventually sold it, and everybody that worked with him got a big check. But if Charlie were here, he would tell you that almost none of that original team has a relationship with their children, and almost none of them are on their first marriage. In fact, the founder of the company, he said his relationship with his kids are so estranged, he doesn't even get much time with his grandchildren. That's a bad story. That's not the story you want to tell. Because money comes, money goes. Your story is with you forever. I remember sitting in the original House of Pancakes with Charlie when he told that story, and I made up my mind. I will never, ever sacrifice my family for the sake of my career. I don't want to tell that story. So, ladies and gentlemen, here and elsewhere, every business decision you make becomes a part of your story. Never make a decision that makes you a liar for life. Write a script, tell a story that you're proud to tell your kids, your grandkids, and that you hope your kids and grandkids tell their kids and grandkids about how mama, how daddy had all kinds of opportunities, and they worked hard and they did well. But they did it well within a context where they honored God, they honored their family, they honored their company, they honored the people that came to them, that worked for them, and the people they worked for. That it was not a one-faceted story. It was a story that they were proud to tell at every single level of life. So let me ask you again. What story do you want to tell? Do you know something? You get to decide. And as difficult as the challenges you are facing are right now, a year from now, 5 years from now, they are nothing more than a story you're going to tell, and they're going to be part of your story. So leaders, let's make good choices. Let's ask good questions, and let's all continue to become leaders worth following. Thank you so much for letting me be with you this morning. I'm looking forward to this entire day. Thank you.